Every president in recent history has promised to reform immigration policy.
The issue of immigration stirs intense emotions.
Hello, El Paso!
Our immigration system is broken.
Build that wall! Build that wall!
Safe haven for refugees and asylum seekers.
Yet the problems remain. Now, as the 2024 race looms ahead, how will candidates tackle the legacies of the southern border, family separation, and the end of Title 42? Presidential elections are shaped by key issues. To better understand how immigration could impact the next election, we set out to El Paso, Texas, a city that has among the highest number of illegal crossings along the border. It's a place that has seen a spike as the pandemic-era Title 42 neared its end, leaving people on both sides of the border confused about the future. I'm in downtown El Paso, outside of the Sacred Heart Church, and sleeping outside the church are hundreds of migrants that have crossed the border, some illegally, some legally.
La ley 42, entonces se está arrollando eso y nos están advirtiendo más que todo, ¿cierto? Que nos entreguemos pacíficamente y voluntarios porque ellos van a venir a recoger a todos. Entonces el proceso no va a ser igual.
They woke up this morning to a flyer that had been distributed by the Border Patrol, giving them vague instructions on where to go, where to check in if they had crossed illegally. With no identifying information on the flyers, many of the people we spoke with were worried it was a trap and that they would be deported before Title 42 expired.
Me vuelvo a regresar. Uno busca la manera cómo conseguir plata, cómo pasar otra vez por el mismo lado donde pasó uno. Pero esto lo hace uno la desesperación.
We just crossed into Mexico this morning and we're driving east of Ciudad Juarez, where it appears to us that migrants are being directed away from the city center and towards some of these doors that are along the border wall. We could see hundreds of people lined up on the Mexico side of the border at door 42. Here they waited for Border Patrol to assist them onto buses bound for processing centers. Even though they were being helped by Border Patrol, it's still considered an illegal crossing. Hola, señor. ¿Cómo te llamas? We just talked to a gentleman from Venezuela. He had first come up and tried to enter through Matamoros, and he wasn't allowed entry. He had a friend, he said, in Ciudad Juarez, and so he came back this way, and that's where he's been ever since. These are the kinds of scenes GOP candidates vying for their party's nomination have pounced on.
We have to reestablish the rule of law in this country.
Stop, catch and release, and go to catch and deport.
Put back into place the policies that worked under our administration.
Because if they don't paint it, bad things are happening.
But photo ops at the border and campaign promises are far different from real immigration policy changes, something that neither party has found a long-term solution for. I went to speak with Professor Ernesto Castaneda at American University, who has spent his career studying immigration policy. What does an immigration system look like that you think both parties can agree on?
It's actually not that hard, Jorge. If there was a political will, there could be a good immigration reform that could be done. It would make sense for everybody to pass a DREAM Act to expand guest worker programs. It became a bad word in certain years, but an amnesty is just people that are having been here for, you can say, the number of years. But you can regularize the 10 million people that are here and not going to go anywhere.
I can't even imagine a politician saying the word amnesty at this point. I mean,
No, exactly.
Right.
So it's not going to be a campaign issue, but it's something that Congress, in a rational sense, they could, as part of immigration reform, they could easily do, and then it will solve the everyday lives of millions of people.
In hopes of stemming the flow of individuals crossing the border, President Biden's new policy encourages migrants to apply for asylum in a third-party country. It also enacts harsher punishments on anyone apprehended entering illegally. But many Republicans and even some Democrats have criticized that plan, saying it isn't enough to reduce the pressure on border states. Now, cities thousands of miles away are starting to feel the strain on resources that border states have been dealing with for decades. Now, since last summer, Texas Governor Greg Abbott has been busing many migrants from the southern border to some of these so-called sanctuary cities, like New York, like Washington, D.C., and like Chicago. In May 2023, Chicago's City Council voted in favor of spending $51 million to house and care for migrants. I met with Alderman Nick Sposato of the 38th Ward on Chicago's Northwest Side. Sposato represents a district housing hundreds of asylum seekers, but he voted against the funding.
It was Donald Trump's second best ward, so it's pretty conservative, a lot of city workers, a lot of police, a lot of fire. We have our own problem, we have our own homeless, and if this $51 million was for all homeless, then I'm all in support for it. But it was only for the asylum seekers, that's it. I blame this whole thing on the feds, first of all. So the feds are letting them in, and not letting them work. They're here to work, they're not here to live in police stations, live in colleges, live in shelters, they just want to come here and work.
Housing the migrants in Sposato's ward was always meant to be a temporary solution. The city's long-term plan was to house migrants in a vacant high school in a middle-class black neighborhood on the other side of the city. But residents and former alumni, like Terry Hardy, have been trying to get the school reopened for years to help revive the struggling neighborhood. What were some of the main disagreements with using this space for that?
Well, first of all, this is a school. This is not a hotel. Aside from that, it also brings to the surface that others have been put before people who already live here as it relates to the resources that are being allocated to the migrant issue. I hate to say it, but man, that pissed everybody off.
After a contentious community meeting in May, followed by a lawsuit, the city dropped the plan to house migrants at the school.
We're not against asylum seekers. They are humans, and they do deserve to be treated humanely, first and foremost. But we do too. There's a humanitarian crisis already here in the South Shore.
Back in Ciudad Juarez, there is a small tent village near the international bridge that connects the U.S. to Mexico. People here have been camped out for weeks, some for months, waiting to make an appointment to apply for asylum legally.
Anoche no puedo dormir en realidad por el frío y pensando las cosas y pensando y esperando y confiando en Dios de que nos den la oportunidad, de que Dios meta su mano y nos ayude a todos. Yo apliqué ya a la página, ya aplicamos. Estamos esperando a las 10 a ver si somos opcionales para una cita.
Carla Arias is a mother of two. She left her children behind in Venezuela, waiting until she secures their papers to spare them the dangerous journey.
Yo prefiero hacerlo por la vía legal, hacer las cosas bien porque no sé si más adelante por hacerlo ilegal me regresen y todo el trabajo que hice, todo el esfuerzo, todo el frío, el hambre, todo lo que pasamos sea en vano.
According to U.S. Customs and Border Protection data, there's been a significant drop in illegal entries since Biden's new border policy went into effect in May 2023. Though it's too soon to predict the lasting effects, the policy is now facing legal challenges. How do you talk about this issue and not get people angry?
Politicians of both parties should be less afraid about being labeled weak on immigration because immigration policy is not that important for most Americans.
Castaneda isn't wrong, but while immigration isn't the top issue for most Americans, it's a flashpoint on the campaign trail and ranks very high among Republicans. But decades of bipartisan inaction has a way of rearing immigration back into the minds of voters when they cast their ballots on Election Day, especially when the crisis remains visible on the southern border.